Shalom and welcome to TBN Israel, the podcast. I'm Yair Pinto, and with me is the one and only, all the way in Jerusalem, Mati Shoshani, and right next to him is Tomer, the Nat Chuti, director of our show. How are you guys doing over there?
Yair looks like you're lost in the woods somewhere in the U.S. What happened?
Feels like every place you walk here, there's like an entire forest the size of Israel, Mati. But today we're talking about Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, the threats that they carry out against Israel, and I'm talking about wiping out the Jewish state, while at the same time negotiating a nuclear agreement to lift the sanctions of the United States and the world leaders on Iran so that they can, keep enriching uranium for peaceful purposes, allegedly. We have also footage of the underground bunkers that Iran has with advanced weaponry. They are trying to show their strength. So we have a lot to talk about today, Mati.
Yeah, we have a huge amount to talk about. And I think today is a really good opportunity to try to really dive into the brain of the people that lead Iran. And I say that because we've been talking about this a lot on the newscast. It becomes confusing. You hear such conflicting news segments every day. One day it says, tomorrow there'll be peace. Actually, several people wrote me, critiquing me, saying, you said a couple days ago that you were hopeful. Why are you hopeful? I said, it's because, the expression was the best of times, it was the worst of times. We're as close as we could be to a war, and we're as close as we could be to peace, and both of them at the same time. And I think the fact that so many different channels of communication and channels of events are happening at the same time is very confusing for people at home. And I hope today we can really unpack everything that's been happening, because honestly, it's been a lot. I mean, as we're sitting down here in the studio to go live with this, there's news that's coming in from the Iranian government. One, it seems like, I don't know what he's doing, but it's whoever's operating his X account for Khamenei, the supreme leader, he's been working overtime lately.
Hey, Mati, we should hire this guy. I mean, he's doing a good job. He's like all over the place.
He's doing a great job.
And he's also tweeting in Hebrew. Nonetheless.
He's fluent in Hebrew too, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
You never know. Maybe they hired someone in Israel. That is possible.
So it also happened in the past year and a half. We've seen that as well, of Iranian influence hiring Israeli spies to try to get information on people in Israel. So let's break down the history, Mati, I think. Okay, so in the past year and a half, Iran funded and ordered its proxies to carry out attacks against Israel. And I'm talking about Hamas, Hezbollah, their Crown Jew, and other Iranian militias in Iraq and Syria, and then the Houthis.
Did you say Crown Jew?
Crown.
That's a wonderful expression.
Crown Jew. Crown Jewel.
We need to coin that. The Crown Jew.
Yep, exactly. And
anyway.
And Mati, on top of that, Iran have launched direct attacks against Israel twice. The first one was around 200 ballistic missiles and 250 suicide drones towards the Jewish state. Do you remember that night that we were all in anticipation for the drones?
I remember we were going live while our families were in the bomb shelters. I do remember that.
Yeah.
It was very unwise on our behalf. That's what it was.
I remember that. I tell my wife, it's okay. I just put on my bulletproof vest. It will be safe against a ballistic missile, Yeah, so they did that. And then Israel retaliated against these strikes by targeting strategic locations of the military of Iran, and according to the reports, destroying all the aerial defensive systems of the Islamic Republic of Iran, leaving the airspace of Iran open to strikes by Israel, by the United States. And the purpose of these strikes can be either to strike the nuclear facilities of Iran. It can also be to strike the water dams and then cause extreme disasters across the country, to destroy the ports of Iran and then cripple the Iranian economy even more. So there are a few options for a military operation against Iran. And what Israel did back then is set the stage for that strike. So now Iran has no aerial defensive systems, at least the way that they had before. And they're open.
It has less.
Yes.
They're not completely empty. It has less. I appreciate you connecting the dots. I think people that are looking at the news today, they need to remember that this story hasn't been going on for a month, 2 months or even a year, we're going on Iranian influence in this region over 40 years. I think it's almost 45 years of negative influence in this region. And with, with a lot of energy and a lot of effort, more than 20 years of creating a ring of fire around Israel that's been mostly dismantled. And you really need to look at this whole situation, and I think this is the only perspective that makes sense from the background of the history of everything that's been happening. And I'll explain that. We look at today's events, and we try to understand, wait, why won't the Iranians give up their bomb? Give up your bomb, it makes sense. And they'll say, we're not giving it up.
Don't give your bomb, give your uranium.
Yeah.
Move it to a third country.
And what they're doing is they're doing more of what they've done in the past. They look at this and they say, look, we're an Islamic revolutionary government. The reason we're still in power is because we've been able to subjugate our people, to torture them, to scare them into cooperating with us. We've scared the entire region. And if we give up on this, if we give up on our nuclear capabilities, we don't only lose externally, because in the most obvious way, when the US says do this or else and you comply, you've lost. That's one. But they also lose internally. They've shown weakness to their people. They've shown that they've capitulated to what the Americans are forcing them to do, and they'll suffer dramatically inside. What they've been trying to do, and you really need to look at the history of Iran, especially during the last, let's say, what has it been, 12, 13 years of nuclear supervision. They're masters of evading supervision. And that's really sort of the mechanics how they operate, and they're trying to do the same now. They say on the one hand, yes, and then on the other hand, the guy goes out and says, actually, I still plan to kill you all, and we will not be giving up our nuclear abilities. And people look at this and they say, yeah, you're doing the news every day. What is going on here? Like, I feel like the news flips every day.
Yeah, exactly, Matti. And let me, give a background story to that as well. I mean, for more than, 20 years, for many, many years, Iran has been chanting, death to America, death to Israel. America is the big Satan, Israel is the little Satan. And they haven't just, chanted these slogans in protests. They actually used the money that was granted to them following the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, that was signed in 2015 with the world powers, okay, in the time of the Obama administration. And they used that money to sponsor and pay and train and ship weapons to Hezbollah, to the Houthis in Yemen, and to this region, basically creating what we're dealing with now. So I'm afraid that this agreement, whatever it will be, if Iran promised not to enrich uranium, which I don't believe them anyway, but that might be just another cycle of rearming the proxies and another war against Israel in the next 10 years or 15 years. This is something that I hope that will not happen.
It's a very valid concern, though. I'd say before we go any further in the show, it's time for everyone at home to pause your video for just a second. Pause the video for just a second, like, share, and subscribe. It means a lot to us. It helps the channel grow. It helps us gain momentum with the YouTube algorithm gods. Keep the subscriptions coming and keep liking and sharing. It makes a huge difference. Now back to this, Yair, you were talking about the fact that context is king with understanding the Iranian story. And I think that's really the story that we're living in. I was trying to get in the head, we've been talking about this for days, into the head of the Iranian regime. And I think for a while there, people were hoping that they would actually just sort of like give in to the American pressure. Look, they're scaring them enough, And when you think about their interest, it almost makes sense that they wouldn't be able to give up on their nuclear plan. As in, if they give up on their nuclear plan, they're just screwed internally. In the sense that they lose so much face in front of their people and so much face in front of the regional powers that be, that they'll have a very hard time recovering from that. And at the same time, if they continue to resist the American negotiation and force the US's hand to actually attack or have an initial attack, then they lose too.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to, we say in Hebrew, to walk between the raindrops. They're trying to skip between the oncoming obstacles, not really commit to any of them, and prolong the negotiation as much as possible. This has always been their methodology. They always go this way, and they're trying to do so the same. They're on the one hand having direct negotiations with the US. On the other hand, they're threatening the same day, we will destroy Israel. They're saying these things out loud as if it's like nothing, business as usual. The Houthis are pressing all the red buttons. And then at the same time, they come in and say, look, we know we were negotiating, but actually we're never giving up our nuclear enriched uranium.
Yeah.
So it's a very confusing process so far.
No, completely. I completely believe it's just a way for them to gain more time, because something we learned here in the Middle East and something that the West, for some reason, do not understand, is that the radical Islamic ideology is built on whatever land that ever belonged to a Muslim country should be once again owned by a Muslim country. So that's what we see the major players of this region do. They're playing the long game. They believe that they should conquer the entire Middle East. And I'm talking about the Iranians now, for one. So they're playing the long game. They're willing to sign this agreement with the United States, so they'll gain more money, avert this current conflict, and then hope for maybe a different leadership in the West in 4 years. I mean, 4 years is nothing for the terrorist regimes that do not really have any kind of democratic elections. They can plan something 20, 30 years ahead, and that's what we see. That's what we see that Iran is doing. That's what we see that Turkey is doing. That's what we see that Saudi Arabia is doing, but through different means, mainly economic means and cooperation with the West. Basically, this is what the Middle East is all about. It's the long game. It's not short terms. It's controlling the population by showing force and not by, doing good with the people of the country itself. And the people of Iran want a change. We see that because we have like a lot of Iranian viewers here on the channel. So first of all, thank you guys for watching. Really, really appreciate the comments, the prayers. We are praying for you also. And I encourage all the viewers to pray for the Iranian people, because they're the ones that suffer the most because of this regime. And if they will have a better leadership, this region will be amazing. And we can have, once again, flights to Iran. Mati can go visit his old neighborhood of ancestors. Mati is originally Persian from like many generations ago.
Several generations back.
So yeah.
But I would love to. I would love to, and I think people often forget, and this is sort of a side note, they forget, there's this term called the dividend of peace.
Yeah.
How good things can be when things are peaceful between countries. The trade and the commerce and the tourism and all that stuff. We got to experience firsthand, with the Abraham Accords, and myself, Samuel Smadja, Segev, traveled to Abu Dhabi and Dubai. And you think about these things, it's a country that I never thought I would be able to visit in a million years. And suddenly they're open. There were hundreds of thousands of Israelis going to visit them. They were doing business with us. They were investing in Israel. We were investing there. It's this virtuous cycle that is so, it's almost unimaginable until you see it. And I think that is possible. But we need to remember that you have to be truthful with the conversation that we're having in the Middle East. And to that effect, look, the Iranians are really consistent in what they say. And I think for once we should take them at their word. We learned big time in, after October 7th, 2023, that when a country says we're going to do everything we can to destroy you, one day they're going to try. And they've been trying for a lot more than a day. They've been trying for decades. And they openly say, we will kill you all. We will destroy everything you stand for. And not only that, at the same time that they're negotiating, I say quote unquote negotiating, because they're not really negotiating, when they're spinning the wheels with the Americans, at the same time, they're running a propaganda campaign within their country, releasing tons of footage of, look at our arsenal, look at our drones, look at our missiles, look at our bunkers. The Americans will never make it into our bunkers. They'll never be able to get in. And on this goes. Threats against Israel, threats against the US, threats against countries that want to travel through the Arabian or the Red Sea. So you need to look at their rhetoric, and for once, let's just be truthful, or let's be honest with them and say, look, you're men of your word. We're going to take you at your word. When you say you want to destroy us,
if you want to kill us,
we're going to
believe you. We believe you. Let's believe when people say something. It's not that hard. Let's look at the title of Khamenei on his social media. He just posted a title, why must the Zionist regime be eradicated from the Middle East? Okay, that's a title that you post at the same time that you're negotiating an agreement that will affect the entire Middle East and the world with one of our, with the biggest ally of Israel. That's the title. I mean, what do you think we can do with this situation? He's literally negotiating while explaining to his people the reasoning behind destroying the Jewish people. Does it sound like something familiar, Mati? For maybe Holocaust times?
It is familiar, but it is familiar. Let's get into the Iranian head. By the way, next week is, thank you for saying that, next week is International Holocaust Day. International or Israeli Holocaust Remembrance Day?
International.
International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And myself and several members of our team are going to be in Auschwitz for the March of the Living. Not to celebrate, but to celebrate the fact that people lived and to mark the fact that it should never be forgotten. But to your point, yes, the Iranians are making that threat. But let's remember what they're experiencing right now. They have parked at their front yard 3 carrier groups of the American Army, or I should say the American Navy and Marines.
Yeah. They have big armies, unlike us.
Enormous amounts of soldiers. We're talking each one of these floating cities armed to the brim with aircraft, with stealth aircraft, with intelligence aircraft, with all the munitions to fight an extended war. Soldiers, B-2 bombers, B-52 bombers, like everything is stockpiled.
Half of the U.S. military is in the.
Really? I didn't know it's that much. Almost saying that half of the U.S. military forces is in our region.
Half? Wow.
The U.S. half. That's unbelievable.
That's a lot.
That's what they say.
So they're negotiating. So Iran's threatening us and threatening the U.S., but they're negotiating while there is the deadliest war machine in history parked at their gates, and they're saying to them in a very, very clear way, cooperate and negotiate and do so fast, or else, and take a look, this is or else. We're displaying it right in front of you. There's an armada of vessels, both aircraft and seafaring vessels, and everything that has ever been manufactured for warfare. It's all parked at your front door. And not only that, we've been training, and we want you to know that, with the Israeli Air Force for years now. We've run through the drills. We have the targets. They're all in the computer. All we need to do is press enter, and everyone runs to their bunkers to get in their jets and come bomb Iran.
Yeah.
And you need to remember, they're negotiating with that level of threat looming over their head. And again, go into that. They're an animal that's fighting for its survival. Because one way or another, if they give up too much in the negotiation, they lose. And they might lose their government and their control over the people. And if they give too much, and if they extend or prolong or play the game of negotiation too long, the U.S. might run out of patience, or someone might make a stupid decision, and then what happens? Full-on war.
Yeah.
And that full-on war, within hour number 12 of that war, Iran is back in the Stone Ages. It loses electricity, it loses its grid, it loses its military communications, and it's back to fighting, essentially on foot and on jeeps without communication with handguns. They're going to lose a lot of their fighting ability, and they know that.
And then what will happen? And the Ayatollah regime knows that very well. They're going to be the first ones that the public of Iran will blame. And, hundreds of thousands of people will just march over to the government and to the positions of the Ayatollah regime and all the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. They won't be able to hold against their own population because they are controlling the people of Iran by force, by executing people, by hijacking people, by kidnapping any kind of opposition to the current regime. And once they lose all their ability to defend themselves internally, they will fall fast. But, saying all that, let's talk about the negotiations. I mean, the situation, what's on the table? What are we discussing? So the United States envoy, Steve Witkoff, said that at first, Iran might enrich uranium to 3.67%. I'm not good with, nuclear science. I missed a few classes in my nuclear bombs making, high school days. But I don't know if that's good or bad, but I think that any percent sound to me pretty bad because, you reach to a point that it can be a nuclear bomb. So that doesn't sound like a good step to allow them to enrich any kind of uranium because Who said they're gonna tell you that it's 3.6 and not 80%? So that's the situation now. But this is
this is the never-ending situation though with the Iranians. It's always debating over the details, and while you're debating over the details, they're running, they're sprinting towards the finish line, trying to enrich uranium, and et cetera, et cetera. And they've always done this. They're very, very, very crafty at playing the game of negotiation. And in that sense, I mean, one of the offers that's on the table is removing uranium completely from Iran and saying go store it in a different country. They're trying to make this claim, look, it's for civilian purposes where, we are an oil-rich country, but maybe in the future we'll want to do research with enriched uranium. Maybe we'll want to run a power plant with enriched uranium. It makes no financial sense, but maybe we want to. Let us explore our options. So the U.S. says to them, sure, take it out of the country, go store it elsewhere so we can actually track the uranium that you have. And they, of course, they've played with the idea for a day or two, and then they're like,
I don't think so.
We don't think we're going to do any of that. I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the country that was suggested to store the uranium is Russia. And that's also raises some questions because Iran has been supplying Russia with weapons, with drones throughout this war against Ukraine. And Russia is one of Iran's only allies at this time. So that might be also like a very interesting solution that you would think that they might consider. But according to reports that we've been receiving today, they are not even considering the option of giving the uranium and placing it in any third-party country at this point. And correct me if I'm wrong, Tomer.
Go back to their analysis of interest. Why would they do that?
Yeah.
Why would they give up if giving up means that they've lost a huge amount of their clout in the Middle East, a huge amount of the respect that and the fear that their population holds against them? So in their eyes, they're doing the right thing. The right thing is we're going to fight almost to the death to make sure that we don't lose this, because losing this, and we've talked about this many times, you and I, Yair, is people have learned the lesson of giving up on nuclear bombs, on nuclear capability. And the lesson is called Gaddafi. Gaddafi is removed, unceremoniously. The minute he shows weakness, the West comes in, and it was very cynical, comes in and essentially tries out all their new weaponry and special forces on his country. He is, as Trump likes to say, killed in the street like a dog by his own people. And they've been at civil, and I mean, really.
Don't forget the footage.
And they know, and believe me, no dictator in the world forgets the footage. And the lesson is clear. Give up your nuclear bombs or your nuclear capability, and you get Gaddafi. So if that's the equation,
your people are gonna dance with
your
head.
Exactly. Your people are gonna rip your body apart, and they're gonna dance in the streets after you die. No one wants that.
Not a very nice.
Definitely not dictators of countries.
Not a nice image, Matti.
Yeah. Exactly, and they look at that and they say, why would we give up? And then they look at another business model that exists out there, and that business model is called North Korea. And in the North Korean business model, a country that is impoverished, that can't even feed its population, it can barely clothe its army, can't even give them weapons, has guns with I mean, they're a bankrupt country essentially. They have nukes, and no one's willing to touch them. Not only that, this defunct, bankrupt country has the president of the U.S. in person come to try and bring a deal together with them. That's Trump in his previous term. So they look at that model, they're like, that seems like a wonderful model. We're a lot bigger, we're a lot more powerful, we have a ton of natural resources. Let's go down North Korea's route, I mean, minus the funny haircuts and the mass starvation of the people. But let's go down that route.
They actually have mass starvation of the people, Matti. They're heading that way.
North Korea?
No, Iran. And basically all these dictatorships are starving and using their population. But yeah, I agree what you're saying. Then there's no choice.
Listen. Yeah. Just to frame this, people around the world don't know this. When dictatorships fall apart, they never go nicely. And this is the kind of thing that the Iranian government is afraid of. In the 90s, the Soviet Union collapses, falls apart. They stopped feeding their satellite countries, namely Cuba and North Korea. North Korea had, we don't know the exact number. Let's say the number is roughly somewhere between 8 to 14 million people that die of starvation. Those are the numbers that happen in these kind of countries. Iran looks at this and they say, like, we look at the situation in that country and we want the power that North Korea has, and we don't want the weakness that was projected by Gaddafi. And we're not going to make that mistake. And in their mind, and I think I would do the same thing if I was in their position, I hope I would be a better leader than them. But if you look at the question of, like, if I lose power, what do I do not to lose power? They're willing to kill their people. They're willing to act violence. They're willing to suffer short-term, 3, 4, 5, 7 years of financial downfall in the long term, hold on to power. Yeah. And that's where I think the Trump administration becomes very interesting for this entire conversation, because they've been negotiating with the global economy in a way that is unlike anything that happened before that. They're talking about, let's talk money and business before we just talk geopolitics and what's right to do, quote unquote. They're doing a lot of things that are the right thing to do. But at the same time, they're saying, look, the business has to work. And I think the Iranians are aware of that. They look at it from the same perspective. They want to be brought to the table and say, like, hey, Iran, give up something, give up your nukes, give up, something, and we'll bring you back into, like, the inner circle of financial prosperity. And that's exactly what they want. And I think that's another way that you could look at this entire deal, where this would be a huge effect on the relationship between the Iranians, the Americans, and others in this region. Iran is an oil and natural gas-rich country that has an educated population. It has the ability to manufacture. And if aid came in, if trade was possible, if embargoes were removed, they could prosper very quickly. They could see growth that is...
If the people will replace the regime.
Yeah, but yes, but the government's not interested in that.
Yeah.
If the people replace the regime, you'd probably see several years of instability until it was stabilized. And when that happens, you have infighting, faction fighting, tribal warfare. Baluchis rebel against central government. You'd have a lot of those kind of things happen.
Yeah, Matti, do you remember on April, talking about Iranian influence and launching missile at Israel, on April 1st, 2024, there was a ballistic missile that was launched towards Israel.
I do remember,
Just another one. Well, we have like multiple missiles every week in some periods of times in the past year and a half. And in this missile that crossed the border from Yemen into Israel, the Israeli defensive forces reported that the missile was intercepted in the sky before entering the Israeli airspace. So, but when a missile explodes in the sky, it doesn't mean that the people of Israel do not go to bomb shelter, because this missile, for our viewers to understand, is the size of a bus. Okay, imagine a school bus exploding in the sky. There are many debris, and sometimes it falls on a rooftop in Israel. So regardless if it's intercepted or not, the millions of people in Israel need to go to bomb shelters. And as they do that, many run and fall, because it's usually in the middle of the night, and you need to carry your kids or go downstairs because not every house has a bomb shelter within. And when this happens, many Israelis get injured and get hurt in the process, okay? And in the middle of the night, when the sirens are going on, we have a first responder team called Magen David Adom, and they rush to the scene of the injured, of the hurt. It can be a terrorist attack. It can be somebody falling in the stairs. It can be something good also, a woman giving birth. So I'm proud to present our partners for today's show, Magen David Adom. They are Israel's first response team. We have been with them, I think, from the first few months after this war started. They're like our longest standing partner at TBN Israel, and we are very proud because we know them, we know the people that are working in Israel, and they're not really working, they're volunteers. Imagine, 35,000 people of Magen David Adom are actually volunteers. All the ambulances, all the medical supplies, the training is raised by donations from people around the world, including you. So if you want to help Israel save lives, go to www.savelifeisrael.com. Again, it's www.savelifeisrael.com. This is the organization that helps Israelis in crisis situations and gives the first response. Within a minute and a half, they are at the scene of the incident and giving help, trying to save the lives of the people. So they're our partners here at TBN Israel. Thank you. Matti, after this short brief, I think it's important now to talk about a very interesting alternative to the Ayatollah regime. And I'm talking about the Shah. You know, remember the Shah? The Shah was the leader of Iran back in, I don't know, before the Islamic Revolution, so before the 1970s.
But he was the unpopular ruler of Iran.
Yes, agreed. But the current rulers are even less popular at the moment. So, you know, it's that choice between two lesser evils. You choose the unpopular that you don't remember that was living in the past. So his grandson is actually living, I think, in the United States. And there have been talks or reports circulating about the option of rising him up to rule the country instead of the Ayatollah regime. What did you hear about this stuff?
So we've interviewed a bunch of different experts on Iran in recent months. And,
In INS.
Yeah. JISS.
JISS.
JISS and... So JISS is the Jerusalem Institute of Security and...
Strategy and Security.
Security, thank you. And we also interviewed experts in INSS, which is the Israeli Institute of Strategy
National
and Security,
Security Studies. Israeli Institute for National Security Studies.
Anyway.
Yeah. Contest of acronyms.
We're going deep into the acronyms of the show. We've interviewed many of the experts on this topic in recent months. And what's interesting is you hear again and again the same narrative, which is that the people of Iran love Israel, hate the regime, hate what radical Islam has done to their country, and are waiting for someone to help them overthrow the government. And then you start seeing the demonstrations, violent demonstrations. You know, the government has to use live fire to put them out. People that write, and we see this, people that write support messages to Israelis every time there's a conflict. I think there is hope to have a different future with the Iranian people. Look, before the Islamic Revolution in Iran, Israel had open diplomatic relationships with them. We traded with them, we bought oil from them, we sold them weapon systems, we sold them technology. We had a great relationship with them. It didn't end well because, again, the Islamic Revolution was not pro-Israeli in its nature, but the potential is there because the population doesn't hate us. I think this is a good time also to pivot to what's happening within Israel, because a big player in all of this is Prime Minister Netanyahu. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been Prime Minister of Israel or in a key position since me and you have been in high school.
Exactly.
I'm in my 40s.
Exactly.
Just to give people an idea.
I'm not just to give people an idea. I'm still young. Still have some years to go.
Yeah, he loves pointing out that he's several years younger than me. Anyway. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been the man shouting at the gates time and time again, stop the Iranian bomb, stop the Iranian bomb. He has been sort of the forerunner in geopolitics globally of trying to prevent it, of speaking against it, on rallying support, to boycott them, to sanction them, to do all of that stuff. And Israel isn't planning to give up. Israel, and I want to say this in the most severe way possible, there is a possibility, as we're sort of, reaching the end of this podcast, there is a possibility that there will be an agreement. And there's a valid possibility that that agreement will not be good enough. And if we don't attack now, we might not have this window of opportunity for many years to come. Because we've broken down their air defenses, we've broken down their Hezbollah proxies and their Hamas proxies, so their ability to negatively affect Israel is dramatically diminished. And because of that, if an agreement is reached where the US administration says, we're good with this agreement, and Israel looks at it and says, this means the Iranians have a bomb in 24 months, that means we need to attack. And Prime Minister Netanyahu and Minister of Defense Katz have been very bold about saying this. They've gone on camera just the other day. And people were talking about our defense doctrine in the years to come. And they said, look, we're no longer trusting other people to fight our wars or to protect our borders. We're remaining with the strongholds within Syria, within Lebanon, within Gaza Strip, and if needed, Iran. And people need to know that that's on the table as far as Israel is considered. We can't live with an Iranian bomb.
And more than that, Mati, look at the history of the Middle East, okay? All the nuclear reactors, all the nuclear programs, if it's in Syria, in Iraq, were destroyed by an Israeli strike at the end, because Israel is the only one that can vouch and can stand in the defense of the Jewish people. That's it. That's the only thing. And we've seen that happening in the past, and it can happen also in the future and in this situation with Iran. And the stage is set. Since Iran lost its proxy at the Assad regime, okay, in Syria, they also have no aerial defensive capabilities in the country of Syria. So Israel and the way is basically paved for aerial strikes of Israel, of the United States. And even the United States Army tweeted on X in Hebrew saying that, guys, we've been training with your forces. This is the Central Command saying that our Air Force has been training with Israeli Air Force many, many times. We know how to fight side by side. They released footage of Israeli aircraft fighter jets along United States fighter jets flying next to B-52 bombers. You know, this has been trained, practiced, and we are ready to go with the sound of an order whenever is needed to destroy the nuclear facilities of Iran. And the Iranians know this, and that's why the negotiations are positioned at a better stage for the United States, for Israel. But the hope is really that the American negotiations will not fall into the Iranian traps of, let's make this deal for now, and then everybody will be happy, your public will avoid a war, and then the problem will just intensify in the future, or Israel will have to deal with it themselves. This is like what we want to avoid in the situation.
Yeah, and that's a very intense scenario where we have to sort of go against the U.S. administration and strike, because timing is crucial in this.
Yeah. And Mati, we didn't talk about the fact that the United States just approved and started a shipment of more than 3,000 munitions for the Israeli Air Force. These are basically big bombs that can be used against Iran, can be used against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and basically be used by Israel on our multiple front war. These are weapons that Israel purchased from the United States, and the shipment was frozen by the Biden administration. But now Donald Trump unfroze this shipment of munitions. And also Israel already purchased extra 10,000 different munitions for the Israeli Air Force. So the goal of this is to, resupply our bunkers and our munitions after a year and a half of intensive fighting. It's very important for Israel, but it's also an interest of the United States to have a strong ally in the region. Guys, you need to remember that Israel is the only country that is democratic in the Middle East. There are no other countries. Imagine that, okay? So the US has an interest to keep Israel alive, strong, and with a qualitative edge over our neighbors in this region, okay? And if you talk about...
Let me just add a sentence to that, Yair, and say to people that are about to comment, the fact that countries have elections doesn't make them democratic.
Exactly, especially...
For those of you who are about to jump to your keyboard, if the same candidate wins every single time, and no one else opposes him, it's not called democratic elections, it's called a rigged election.
Especially...
And that's important to know because many...
Especially
in
if
Iran.
it's 99% support for a candidate or above 92 support for a candidate. And I'll just give you an example. These are the percentages of the elections in Syria. Okay, Assad, the guy that was just toppled by the people, and also in Egypt. These are the percentages of the elections. So it's not like the people love them so much.
You think about it. Yeah. Look, in Israel, we've had, Netanyahu's been prime minister a very long time, but he's lost multiple elections. He's lost, after being prime minister, and he's been, on certain fields, he's been a very successful and popular prime minister. He's lost elections time and time again. He did so in the late 90s. He's done it several times. And he's iterated and learned, but still in this country, when he loses, he's not prime minister anymore. And at least that keeps a lot of the checks and balances in our country in a substantial way. let's start wrapping this up. I want to go with where we're going with all of this.
But
Okay.
before you wrap up,
Before we end, yeah, maybe you have a message to our audience.
Okay, this is a special message to you from the United States of America. If you haven't subscribed yet, please click the subscribe, that bell button, the like, and share this video with at least one person. It really helps us to reach more people around the world. And I would like to hear from you. What do you have to say about the negotiations between the United States and Iran? Do you think the US should be harder? Do you think they should allow them any kind of uranium enrichment? Or do you think the negotiations should start with, you want us to remove the sanctions? Remove the nuclear program altogether, okay? Nuclear program or no nuclear program for Iran? That's what I want to hear your response on the comments, so please let me know. I'm just going to give you a minute. And I'm also giving you a chance to subscribe before you miss any content. Okay, great. So, Mati.
Okay, now we continue.
Yeah, continue.
Let's talk about predictions. So this can go one of two ways. And the sad thing is, my sense is the U.S. is pushing for an agreement. And they're pushing for an agreement that isn't going to be good for Israel in the long run. They're going to try to frame it, oh, look, you know, we got everything that was needed. They gave up their nuclear program. But at the same time, in Parsi, the Iranians are going to be celebrating and saying, we gave it to them again.
We tricked the West again.
We tricked them again. We won again. We won again. Look, they'll be parading in their cities, and we'll be back to where we were previously.
Yeah.
And for our country, that's a huge, huge danger. I really hope it doesn't come to that. And I know this is a terrible thing to say as far as like the violence of it goes, but sometimes violence is the only route. The Iranians have proven time and time again for decades now that they are steadfast, they are, stubborn when it comes to executing their, radical Islamic ideology. And they're open about it. They've been telling us, hey guys, we want to kill you. We're taking all our money and everything we have to kill you. We want to kill you. We're just going to kill you. And then and then people in the West say, I think we can negotiate with them.
Why? Why do they want to kill us? It's like, look, guys, do Mati and I look so bad, okay? We are officers in the Israeli Defensive Forces. Oh, we don't look so bad. Tell that to the Iranian people. Don't kill us, please. We want to live here in peace with the Iranians, with the Lebanese, with the Syrians, and with the Houthis from Yemen that I can bet never, ever met a Jew or an Israeli in their lives. Like, for sure, there's no chance they met any Jew, but there is this unbelievable hatred. Well, so Mati, you think that there will be an agreement with the US and Iran? That's what I'm hearing you saying? That you think that they will reach an agreement that will be bad for Israel?
Yeah, I'd say probability-wise, the biggest probability or the highest probability right now is an agreement. And unless, and we've talked about this several times, unless there's a mistake that's made where accidentally, misinterpretation, there's many scenarios where someone could accidentally start like an attack. I think the U.S. wants to be done with the deal and to be able to show a win. I think Iranians will do everything they can to avoid conflict because they're going to lose in the conflict. When your country's been bombed, there's no way to spin it as a win. Yeah. If you can say we had an agreement, and by the way, Israel's done this even during this war, with Hamas, you can always highlight the details in the agreement that favor you and say, look, we got all this stuff. And you can ignore the fact that you had to give up different things or concede to other things to reach that point. I think it's going to go that way, very likely. My hope is that it's a strong agreement that forces Iran to give up fully on their nuclear program and to stop financing terrorism.
Yeah.
My fear is that that's not going to happen, that it's going to be a weakened agreement like we've seen in the past. And in 2, 3, 4 years, we're back where we were previously.
Mati, I have another scenario that I want to voice. I don't know if that's like the rational scenario, but I really hope that the United States administration has a different plan in mind. A plan that will involve reaching some sort of an agreement with the Iranians while at the same time creating an alternative to the Ayatollah regime. Because Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is very old and his health is not so well according to reports. Okay, he's above the age of 80 and there is no successor. Like, there are a few people that are being talked about, but there's no successor to replace him. And it seems like internally in Iran, there are people that are already, working towards gaining that position. So my hope in this situation is that the United States of America and the Trump administration have another plan, like something that they're working on in the back room in order to find a successor for the Ayatollah regime to release the Iranian people from these tyrants that are destroying the economy. And then you have no need for this agreement at all because you have a partner and an ally that you can work with in Iran. That's my hope. But in the meantime, I believe that the United States also has a backup plan regarding a nuclear military option against the nuclear program. And worst case, they can always say, it wasn't us. Israel destroyed the nuclear facilities. We told them not to, you know, something like that. So that's kind of my hopes in this situation.
Interesting.
You know?
Very interesting. Look, I hope that we dismantle their nuclear capabilities.
Yeah.
It really is a necessity for Israel. And we're not alone in this. I mean, like multiple countries that were part of the JCPOA in the past, namely, I think it was the French, the British, the Germans, were speaking up this last week saying like, look, this is cause for concern. These people cannot be trusted with nuclear material. Like we've learned the hard way, don't trust them. So that is my hope.
Yeah.
And I want to be on a positive note, but I feel like with these kind of things, you just need to be truthful about what's really happening. And the Iranians are a threat that has to be dealt with. They made that incredibly clear time and time again.
Yeah, and more than that, Mati, I mean, we just celebrated, we are in the middle of Passover, and the story of Passover reminds us that every generation, there is a nation that wants to destroy the Jewish people and basically the people of Israel, the people of God. And history repeats itself from the biblical times of the Exodus of Egypt until today. Nations come and rise, and they want to destroy the people of Israel. So that means that God is telling us something throughout this situation in the Middle East. There is a reason that Israel is at the news all the time, despite that there are multiple other conflicts and wars around the world. But this tiny country that you can drive from one side to the other in 3 hours is always on the headlines. And why is that? Because Israel is a representation of God's faithfulness to mankind at large. And the enemy is using different nations around the world to try and break this covenant with the Jewish people, with the people of Israel. And you know what? If they will succeed, that means that God, our God, is not a faithful God. I mean, I want to follow a faithful God that his word endures forever. And that's what God is proving towards Israel. So God is working on a personal level to each and every one of us, but he's also working on a nationwide level. Like we've seen in the Bible, all the stories of the Bible are about the people of Israel following God, and God is being faithful. Not following God, bad things happen, but God is still faithful. So Israel is basically an example of modern day miracles, biblical level scale miracles of God's faithfulness in this region. So this is something that we can look at when we see the situation. I think that's positive because I look at the Bible, we are still here. I look at Iran now, we will still be here in 2,000 years from now.
Amen to that. I believe that surely.
Amen.
Yair, enjoy your time in the US. It's good seeing you every time.
Thank you, Mati. I miss you very much.